Six Flags New England is a great park I was able to go to in August of 2024. And I had a very good time riding some of the coasters here, so I thought it would make too much sense to take all of the coasters and rank them. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. First, I just want to say that for obvious reasons, I have not been able to ride the new for 2025 Intamin Straddle Coaster Quantum Accelerator, but I will actually be ranking it where I think it will go. So anyway, let's get right into the video. Starting at the number 11 spot with not just my least favorite coaster in the park, but my least favorite coaster ever. It's Riddler Revenge. I feel like some SLCs, like for example Mind Racer at Darien Lake, can be fixed by new trains. But this coaster is so rough, no matter what they do, unless it's a complete retrack, it just cannot be fixed. But I'm also not a huge fan of these trains either. They're still much better than the old ones, but these trains are like a worse version of the Intamin hard strap trains. And when you're getting jackhammered to death, it doesn't feel very good to have hard plastic straps just banging against your neck. And not to mention, I also kept hitting my head on the seat back. I know some people love this coaster now, but I really just don't at all. At the number 10 spot is a coaster that's not a whole lot better. It's Flashback, a relocated Vekoma boomerang. This is probably my least favorite boomerang, but it's also not a big difference from the others that I've ridden. The Cobra roll going backwards is just like being tortured, but the one thing saving this coaster is the backwards loop. Not only is it very smooth, but it pulls some insane positive G's, and getting a sensation like that in reverse is crazy. Too bad the rest of the ride isn't like that. At number 9 is the last bad coaster on this list. It's Gotham City Gauntlet Escape from... Okay, that's enough. I think you get the point. This is a Mauer Wild Mouse, and it runs way worse than the mock versions I've ridden. The brakes are terrible. The hairpin turns are the most janky of any Wild Mouse, but not in a good way. And the trains are just not good at all. Wild Mouse coasters are not usually my favorite, but this one is just by far my least favorite. Number 8 is Great Chase, an E&F miler kiddie coaster with some good whip and almost some airtime in the end. I really like that the park lets anyone ride so us enthusiasts can get the credit, which is honestly how all parks should be. But that's a topic for another video. And there's also not too much to say about this one because it is a pretty average kiddie coaster, so anyway, let's move on to the next one. At number 7 is Catwoman's Whip. This is a Zier Tivoli coaster with a crazy 20-car long train. And like the name says, you do get some good whip on the end of the train, especially on the first drop. And these coasters aren't that common, so it's pretty cool to come across one at a park. I know some other parks that have them are Six Flags Discovery Kingdom and Great Adventure, but this is the only one I've ridden, and I thought it was a pretty good family coaster. Coming in at number 6 is Joker, the park's SNS free spin, and I thought this coaster was cool, but it honestly felt more like a flat ride than a coaster. And when I was not flipping, which only happens about 2 times, I was kind of just rocking back and forth, so it wasn't a very crazy ride experience like I expected. And it's a cool concept, but I'm just not the biggest fan of it. And there is also a pretty good chance that I just got a bad ride on it. But I know these are not for everyone, and not that I found it crazy, I really prefer other roller coasters, but it is a good fit, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who like it, but it's just not really for me. Coming in at the number 5 spot is Pandemonium, a Gerstlauer spinning coaster, and you spin a lot on this coaster, way more than I expected to. I almost start to feel sick on the brake run because we just kept spinning for at least a few minutes. And there's even a few pretty good airtime moments in the end. And I would say this is probably my favorite spinning coaster. It's really between this and Exterminator at Kennywood because it has the cool double up and the indoor setting. But either way, this is just a great roller coaster, and I love to see parks having this as a family coaster. At number 4 is Thunderbolt, an old wooden roller coaster that I really wanted to like more than I did. I could tell it would have some great airtime moments, but the jackhammering and potholes in the valleys almost ruined the ride for me. It didn't help that I was sitting in the back wheel seat because they had assigned seating when I was there. Next time I go there, I'll try to ride it in the front row or at least in a non-wheel seat towards the front of the train. Because there's a crazy hill at the end of the ride that gives 2 borderline ejector moments, and if it's running smooth, I can't imagine how good that moment will be. At number 3 is Batman the Dark Knight, a small B&M floorless coaster. I waited way longer for this than I ever should have, but that's a story for another video. It's definitely not as intense as the older B&M loopers, but still a fun ride and a great fit at this park. The Zero G roll is the highlight of the ride for me, but I also do really like the vertical loop because it has some good positives. There is a little bit of a rough transition on one of the corkscrews, but I really don't mind it, and it doesn't take away from the ride at all for me. At the next spot is where I think Quantum Accelerator will rank. It looks like a great addition to the park because they actually don't have a launch coaster. And it also might be America's best straddle coaster depending on how fast it runs. And if it actually has 11 airtime moments like the park advertises, then this will really be a great coaster. Maybe even better than the number 2 coaster at this park. And now we're at the top 2. I feel like everyone agrees on what the top 2 is, just not the order of where these 2 coasters go. But for me, I decided at the number 2 spot, I have Superman the Ride. This coaster is really good. A very long ride and has some great floater airtime, and I can't argue that this has one of the best layouts of all time. But I just wish it ran a little bit faster through that layout, because over the years, I've heard coaster enthusiasts say this has ejector airtime all over the place, but for me, it was really just weak to good floater, which is still great and I loved it. But before I rode it, I expected this to be one of my favorite coasters ever, like maybe even in my top 3, but it just wasn't that for me. I still really liked it, just not quite as much as I expected. And at the number 1 spot, I think you all know what it is. It's Wicked Cyclone, the 2015 RMC conversion of Cyclone. And wow, this coaster is so much better than I expected. And at one point, I actually debated if this coaster was my overall number 1, ahead of amazing coasters like Iron Gwazi and Steel Vengeance. But I decided that this coaster is not quite better than Iron Gwazi, but it is just a little bit better than Steel Vengeance in my opinion. And that should tell you just how good this coaster is. I don't care that it's not very tall, or that it's not statistically that fast, but it feels faster than Superman the Ride. And it barely slows down at the end at all like a lot of people say. I can't even put it into words how strong this coaster's airtime is. It shouldn't even be legal to have this strength of airtime on a coaster, and especially this much of it. Especially the hill after the first Zero G roll is completely insane. It's not even ejector, I don't even know what to call it, it's just that strong. This coaster is completely insane, and I can't wait to finally ride it again someday. So that was my ranking of every coaster at Six Flags New England. Comment down below what your list is. And sorry if you heard a little bit of noise in the background. My neighbor's playing some kind of loud music. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, then please like, comment, and subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the next video.
Cracky.